Hello, everyone. This is Karen Cox, the author of I Could Write a Book. It's a modern adaptation of Jane Austen's Emma that came out in September of 2017. But today I have a very special treat for you because I have an interview. I'm interviewing the narrator for the audiobook, which is getting ready to come out as we're recording this. So it's going to be out in early January. The narrator's name is Emily Rahm, and I really feel like I lucked out to find her to tell Emma and George's story. She's pretty awesome. So I think you guys are going to be really pleased with how she's told the story of Emma Woodhouse. So, hello, Emily. How are you?
Hello, I'm good.
I wanted to have you tell us a little bit about yourself. Just some general kinds of things. And also, if I remember correctly, I think you're relatively new to voiceover work. So I wanted to kind of see what made you decide to start narrating.
Yeah, I'm originally from Dallas, Texas, born and raised. Almost 2 years ago, I moved to New York City with my husband, Kendall, and our dog, Monroe. Excuse me. And I've just been sort of doing the actress in New York thing for the last couple of years. And I got into narration and audiobooks because it was sort of suggested to me by a mentor here in New York. And honestly, it was just sort of a natural progression of like who I am as a person. I've always really loved to read. And so like the idea that I could read a book and get paid for it was really exciting. So yeah.
Okay. So is there, that you said that audiobook production is sort of a natural progression from acting. What kinds of skills do you have as an actress that kind of help you narrate a book? What are some things that help with that?
Sure. I feel like as an actress, whenever I read a script, I sort of immediately know what the character's feeling and what's going on in their head and like how the scene should play, so to speak. And so when you're narrating and when you're doing those sorts of things, it helps to be able to quickly say, okay, well, this character's feeling this way and this character's feeling this way about, the situation. Because you got to flip back and forth. So to be able to empathize with all the characters in the story is essential. And so I think that my empathy helps in.
That's kind of interesting to hear you say that. When I write, I'm a visual writer, if that makes any sense. So when I write, I tend to see things very much the way a play or a movie would be. And if I'm, depending on the point of view, I'm looking at it from different perspectives. Do you do that when you narrate as well?
Yeah. I definitely, I also see it like in a movie sort of thing. And so, especially with Emma's chapters that are all written in first person, it was really easy for me to sort of sit in her point of view and see people walking by and see how the scenery is from her perspective. Mm-hmm. And then if I was doing a scene where there were like multiple characters, I was definitely more of in terms of like what I'm visualizing, it was definitely more of a like audience watching a movie and like these people are over here and then we cut to these people over here and that sort of thing. So
interesting. That's interesting. It would be similar in that way. Okay, so I was kind of interested to know what it was about I Could Write a Book that intrigued you enough to consider it. so can you sort of tell me a little bit about how we found each other through your point of view?
Yeah. So, sorry, I got to adjust a little bit here. So I was on ACX and looking for a project. And, as an actress and really anybody looking for a job, you're going to look at several different opportunities and apply to several different opportunities. Always looking for one that's going to sort of mesh with you. And with I Could Write a Book, I was just really intrigued by the premise of the story and the specs for like the type of voice you were looking for, and the type of storytelling you were looking for. And then the audition script as well were just like sat right at home with me. And so I was really excited about it. And so I recorded my audition and sent it in, and here we are.
Yeah, here we are. And it's been a really great experience. When I was listening to your audition tape, I had pretty much given up on finding somebody who could do it the way I wanted. I was just going to table that for a while. And I heard your audition tape, and there were several people who did very good auditions. But maybe the voice wasn't just quite right. Sometimes maybe the narrator was a little bit older than Emma, and that didn't seem to fit right. Sometimes the Southern accents were kind of over the top. And the fact that you're from Texas, I think probably really helped with that a lot. So it was I heard it, and I said to my husband, "What do you think about this one?" He's like, "She's pretty good." So, and that was kind of how it worked from my perspective. It was such a pleasant surprise. So, it was really interesting. This is my first audiobook. I don't know how many of the readers out there know that. And I'm sort of fascinated by the process. So can you tell me a little bit about what that process is like for you? You know, what kind of equipment do you use? Where do you record? Some people use a studio. Do you do that? Do you have any kind of routine? Or some people I've even read about, they have certain kinds of diet things that they do before they record, all that kind of stuff. So tell us a little bit about what your recording routine is like.
Yeah. So at first I was recording in the sort of office of my apartment. But there was so much noise like in the background of my recordings that it wasn't giving me the quality that I wanted. So I actually ended up moving into my living room, which, even though is the largest room in my apartment, is actually the quietest because there aren't any windows. So I set up my little home studio with some blankets on. I don't have any carpet, so I have to put a blanket down on the floor, excuse me, and sort of a blanket behind me, and sort of enclose myself, and then start recording. At first, I could only go for about an hour of recording before my voice would sort of give out. Now I've sort of, I can probably get about 2 hours of good quality sound in before my voice is like, "Nah, we're done." I use a Rode microphone. I don't remember the exact model number. I think it's like a NT1A, I think that's what it's called. So I record and I pack up and I'm done for the day. And then I'll do some more the next day. If I know that I'm going to be recording a lot, I'll drink a lot of water. I usually have a glass of water with me while I'm recording. And I'll have some hot tea, some chicken noodle soup, just depending on how much I know I'm going to be recording. I want to make sure my voice is clear and I'm not like fighting any sort of throat issues.
Mm-hmm. This is a question actually from Meredith from Austen-esque Reviews. She said, prior to narrating I Could Write a Book, were you familiar with the story of Emma? And that was a question that I had as well.
So I had never read Emma. My only previous experience with the story was the movie Clueless.
Very good movie.
Uh, and I think that, you know, Cher is kind-hearted, if a little misguided. And I think that Emma Woodhouse is the same way. She really loves her people, and wants to advise them and wants to be like their, guru or whatever it is. But she just doesn't always know exactly what the best way to do that is. And so like she does what she can, but it ends up not always working out how she wants it to. So.
Yeah, in Austen world, there's sort of two camps on Emma. Some people love her, and some people hate her, and think she's a terrible snob. I have always loved her because I've known so many women like her, and I feel like she's one of these people who loves fiercely. That's the way I like to describe her, and she's very smart and clever, but she's not always wise. And that's one of the things I love about the Emma story, is that it sort of traces that idea of how do I go from being a smart gal, clever gal, into a wiser gal. And that's always one of the things that I've loved about her. Okay, so we have in I Could Write a Book and in Emma, the Austen story, we have this cast of characters. It's one of the charms of Emma. Perhaps more than any of the others, you have this really interesting cast of people. So how did you decide on tones and voice for characters? Like, you have some really interesting options, like Miss Bates, Mrs. Elton, or the Mrs. Elton character, whose name is Edie in I Could Write a Book. George, he's supposed to be swoon-worthy and lovely, which he is. So how did you decide on his, Mr. Woodhouse? Just, take a couple that you think were really interesting or maybe a favorite, and sort of tell me a little bit about how you decided to bring them to life.
Yeah, so honestly, it comes back to the empathy I feel with the characters and hearing them in my head. And you did a really great job of making the characters come to life, just in the way you described them and their personalities and things like that. And so assigning them voices was really easy for me just because of how they were written. And so it was more a matter of finding where in my voice those characters sit. So like Bob has this big booming voice because, he walks into a room and nobody doesn't know he's there, right? He just takes up a room. And being from Texas, I know a lot of men who are that way, very friendly, big booming voices, and just take up the room with their voice. And so that was really fun and really easy. And then Edie, she was a lot of fun because she's just such a busybody, and like she's like that quintessential Southern lady who's like really nice to your face because that's what she's been taught and that's what's polite, but like she doesn't, that she's only being nice to you because she was taught to be. And she has thoughts about you that she might talk about with her friends, but not ever to you. And so it was just about finding their personality and where that personality sits in my voice, and doing it that way.
That's really interesting that you said something about Edie being fun for you. When we were talking about this earlier, because Edie, when I did one of these interviews when the book first came out, somebody asked me who was my least favorite character to write, and I said it was Edie. Because I just didn't like her very much. So do you think you have a favorite character in the book?
Oh gosh. Well, I will say,
or
I really like I mean, I have a fondness in my heart for Emma because, as you were saying, she is full of love. Um, but I did really enjoy reading Edie, just because that personality was fun to play with. Yeah, I don't know. I just the characters were all so much fun to play with. I really liked Helen, um, because
Oh,
she
that's
was
just for the Austen people. That's the Miss Bates character is Helen. Her name's Helen, not Hetty. Okay, all right, go ahead.
um, thank you for clarifying. But yeah, she's always talking and always, she never like takes a breath. So she's just always talking and talking and talking and talking. And so it was difficult to record her because if I like messed up, if I got tongue tied, I had to go all the way back to like the beginning of her page and start over again. But just that energy that she has was a lot of fun.
Okay, let's see. Is there a favorite scene that you have, or a couple of scenes that you sort of liked a lot, and then you give yours, and then I'll tell you mine.
Okay. Yeah, I actually had a couple of scenes that really stood out to me. One was the scene where they're talking about planning a party at Donwell Farms, and Edie is all about like helping George plan the party and making the guest list and yada yada yada. And George is like, "No, Edie, I got this. Like, please stop." So it was a lot of fun to play with that dynamic, because I think that there are a lot of times when you might have someone who's like overstepping their bounds and like you want to tell them to just stop. But me personally, I'm too polite to do that. And so to be able to be like play George, who's like, Edie, stop, was really exciting for me. Another scene that I really liked was sort of towards the end of the book. So spoiler alert, George and Emma are sort of talking together about Mary Jo and Robert Martin. And Emma is worried that she may have let the fact that Robert is African American shade her opinion of him and her opinion about his worthiness of Mary Jo. And George says to her, you know, society changes slowly, but Mary Jo and Martin show us a better way. And Mary Jo and Robert show us a better way. And I think that was a really great conversation to include, because even though the story is set in the 70s, I think even in today, in 2018, it's still a very relevant thing. My younger sister is dating a Black man, and there are people in his circle and in her circle that judge them and don't really approve of their relationship, but they love each other and they make each other happy. And I think that's the most important thing. And so I like that conversation was included, because I think it illustrates how much has changed and how much there is still to change even today.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And it was one of the things that I wanted to include, because it's so, and there were other things too in the book, because it does take place in the 1970s, that looking back on it, you can see, wow, things are so different. And then you can also see, wow, things aren't as different as maybe we had hoped. And that was a conversation that sort of, as I thought about that, looking at that, you know, going backwards, I thought George would be the wise person who would be able to say, yes, but things change slowly. Not that we want them to, but it's just kind of the way human beings are. So that was really interesting to me that you found that relevant even today. My favorite scene, or favorite recorded scene, is one that is an interchange between Emma and the Miss Taylor character, who is her aunt. And I Could Write a Book. And it's when Emma has her heart broken, and they have this wonderful interchange between the two of them, because her Aunt Nina has really served as her mother for a very long time. And when you read it, there was so much feeling and emotion, and it made me tear up, even though, of course, I've read it 400 times. But it was that was one of my favorites. Okay, let's see. Talk about audiobook production a little bit. Being a speech pathologist, I'm really intrigued by accents. And I Could Write a Book requires sort of that upper crust Southern accent, which I think you pulled off beautifully. But are there other skills or factors that go into producing an accurate accent? Do you pay attention to vowels? Do you speed up? Do you slow down? Do you phrase things differently? Is there something that you did to sort of convey that Southern accent?
Yeah, so I'm so glad you liked my Southern accent. That makes my heart happy. But I think that coming from Dallas, where like there aren't a lot of like Southern accents in Dallas, but like outside of Texas, outside of Dallas, there are like my in-laws, for example, they're small town people, and so they have really strong accents. And so I think it's a matter of finding the balance between them. And it definitely comes down to vowels and pacing, just for accents in general. And when I'm trying to find an accent, I will listen to YouTube videos or television shows, or just talk to someone who has that authentic accent and try to mimic what I hear. I've always been really good about matching what I'm hearing. So yeah, I think it's just about finding what's different about their accent compared to your own, and seeing how that plays out, if that makes sense.
So let's talk a little bit about editing, because it seems to me like that would be a very tedious process, editing an audiobook. But I, as a writer, find the editing process very enjoyable. So I really don't like the first draft. That's kind of agony to me, but I like to go back and edit. So tell me, from a producer's perspective, what is editing like?
Editing is very tedious. There's a lot of taking things away, because the first time through, right, you're gonna make mistakes, you're gonna get tongue-tied and have to go back, and so when, like, the first time through editing, I will just take out all the mistakes, all the tongue ties, all the repetitions, anything that isn't just like smooth flow of the story. And then I go back through again and insert like silences between sentences, and so that rather than hearing my breathing or my mouth noises, you're just hearing the story. And then I'll go through again and take out the like the P's and the B's that are popping and like not pleasant to the ear. And then I go through and make sure that it is to the standard for ACX. They have certain like sound levels that they require. And so by the time I'm through editing, I've gone through a chapter at least 3 times, sometimes more, depending on what happened while I was editing and recording. So it's definitely tedious, and I definitely get a little bit tired of the sound of my own voice.
Yeah, well, authors get tired of the sound of their own writing too, so I can kind of relate a little bit. Is there a certain kind of software that you use for editing?
So the program I use is called Audacity. It's an open source program that you can record and edit all in the same package. It's open source, so you can use it on Windows or Mac or Linux or whatever you have. So
cool.
Makes it real easy.
Okay, let's see. I'm trying to think. We've got some questions listed here. I'm trying to make sure I get at least through the ones that I was the most interested in. Here's one. Are there some concepts in written stories that are difficult to convert into an audiobook experience? When I was reviewing the audiobook, there were times when George and Emma are talking to themselves, like thinking to themselves. And it's really obvious on paper that that's what's going on, but I can see now that might have been really difficult to narrate. So what can an author do to make your narration job easier? And I'm asking for a friend.
So I think just in terms of, there are different media. So there are going to be things that aren't as easily conveyed. And that's fine. With the inner thoughts that you were talking about, I tried to make those a little bit quieter and a little bit separate from the surrounding text. And, with things like that, you just kind of have to do the best you can and hope that it comes across. In terms of just things authors can do to help narrators, if there are specific words that need to be pronounced a specific way, like names of places, or if there are words that have multiple pronunciations, like either, or route, or these are all words that can be pronounced different ways depending on who you're talking to. So if there's a specific way that you want those words pronounced, just let us know ahead of time, right at the front. That way, when we get there, we know and we can just do it. And
Yeah, I remember pretty early on that you had asked me about how to pronounce Louisville, because people all over the country pronounce it in different ways. There's Louisville, there's Louisville. A lot of people know that you're not supposed to pronounce it Louisville like you do St. Louis, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But not many people outside of Kentucky, unless they've traveled here, know that natives call it Louisville. It's almost like you sort of slur it all together. So that was one. I think I recorded it maybe on my phone and sent it to you that way. But yeah, I can see where that would be, regional kinds of things. And I write a lot of Southern fiction. I can see where regional things would be kind of difficult. So, okay. Are there any questions that you have for me? Things that, I know we've talked along, as we've gone through this process, but there was anything in particular that you were interested in asking me?
I am interested to know, why you chose the 1970s to set this story in. Obviously, it was written a century or more than a century ago. So you could have chosen any time period between now and then. Excuse me, but you chose the 70s, and I'm curious to know why.
Well, it was sort of something that came to me in a flash. I had written 1932, which is an adaptation of Pride and Prejudice that takes place during the Great Depression in Kentucky. And I had written Find Wonder in All Things, which is an adaptation of Persuasion that takes place in the 90s and 2000s. And in the chronology of how Austen wrote, or how her books were published, and generally how they were written, even though Northanger Abbey is an exception. they kind of went in that sequence. So then I was it ended up being sort of a chance thing that I had done Pride and Prejudice, which was one of her earlier books earlier in the 20th century, and then Persuasion, which was her last book in, at the end of the 20th century. And I've always loved the 20th century. I think that it doesn't get a whole lot of love in fiction circles, but it is a time when things change so very fast, and society changed so very fast. There's all these rapid changes to make things interesting. So when I looked at it that way, I'm like, well, wouldn't it be, Emma's sort of an upper crust gal. George is obviously very wealthy. And this area of central Kentucky where I live, we have those kind of people here. We have the horsey people, the set of people who were quite wealthy at one time, and maybe things have changed. And a lot of that happens with Emma and with her family's farm. It gets portioned off and sold, and I saw that happen here. And so I'm thinking that would be a really good fit. It would be a good fit for Emma. It would be a good fit for George. I know a little bit about it because I was a child then, because I was born in 1965. And I just thought, wouldn't that be a cool place to set it and a good time to set it? So that was kind of how that happened. I don't know if I'll ever, I said this in an interview earlier a couple years ago, I don't know if I will ever go through and do all the Austen books in different areas of the 20th century or not. But so far it seems to have worked pretty well. So I'm sort of leaving that open at this point. But okay, so we'll kind of wrap up a little bit. Can you tell us a little bit about what is coming up next for you? Do you have another audio project that you're working on?
Yeah, I actually just finished yesterday recording and editing The Last Highlanders. It's a sort of historical fiction romance set in the 18th century around the Jacobite Rebellion. So that was really cool. I did my best at a Scottish accent, so we'll see how that goes. But yeah, if I had to guess, I would say it'll probably come out around February or March. But yeah.
Yeah. Is there a place where people can contact you if they're interested in more of your work?
Yeah. You can visit my website. It's real simple, emilyrahm.com. Rahm is R-A-H-M as in Mary. And I'm also on Twitter and Instagram at EMKRahm. So yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, Emily, thank you so much for agreeing to do this video interview. I know sometimes, they're a little bit nerve-wracking, but they're so much fun. And we learned a lot. When we talk face-to-face, sometimes we learn things that we wouldn't have learned in a written format. So I think that they're really nice that way. I Could Write a Book in Audio is coming out in early January. We're anticipating January 5th as the release date. Actually, Emily just submitted the very last part of the concluding credits this morning. So we're getting ready to get it all set up and ready to go out into the world. And I wanted to say special thanks to Meredith at Austen-esque Reviews for hosting us and hosting our video interview so that lots of Austen fans will see it. And I guess I'm going to kind of let you all go now and let Emily go as well. And thank you so much for listening, and hope you check out I Could Write a Book on audio coming in January. Bye, everybody. Say bye, Emily.
Bye.